Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving headfirst into a topic that's near and dear to my heart: construction fails. You know, those moments when someone forgets to carry the one in their calculations, and a whole lot of oops just isn't going to cut it. We've all been there, right? You try to hang a picture and suddenly you're patching more holes than a gopher in a putting green. But these are on a slightly larger scale. We're talking about some of the most expensive construction blunders in history, the kind that make you want to facepalm so hard you give yourself whiplash. So buckle up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode, because trust me, you don't want to miss a single one of these cautionary tales. And hey, maybe just maybe we can all learn a little something from these epic fails. Our next stop takes us to the mid-20th century, to the ambitious yet ill-fated Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Picture it: Tacoma, Washington, 1940. The bridge, nicknamed Galloping Gertie, was a marvel of modern engineering, designed to be the third longest suspension bridge in the world. But there was a problem. The bridge had a tendency to sway dramatically in the wind. Engineers had noticed the issue but believed it was manageable. However, on November 7, 1940, the bridge faced winds of around 40 miles per hour. The oscillations became so severe that the bridge ultimately collapsed into the Puget Sound. The collapse was a spectacular failure, caught on film and broadcast around the world. The financial cost of this disaster was staggering, amounting to approximately $6 million at the time, which is over $100 million today. The collapse of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was a harsh lesson in aerodynamics and engineering. It led to significant advancements in bridge design and construction, ensuring that such a disaster would not happen again. Today, a new Tacoma Narrows Bridge stands in its place, a testament to the lessons learned from this costly blunder, because just like in life, sometimes our biggest failures pave the way for our greatest successes. From the choppy waters of Sweden, we travel to the bustling city of Chicago, where our next architectural marvel awaits. It's time to talk about the Aon Center, a skyscraper that once boasted a luxurious marble facade. Now I know what you're thinking. Marble facade, that sounds fancy. Well, it was, but it also turned out to be a costly mistake. You see, the original design called for the building to be clad in Italian Carrara marble, a material known for its beauty but not necessarily for its durability in Chicago's harsh climate. Construction of the Aon Center began in 1970, and almost immediately, they ran into a bit of a problem. The marble panels began to crack and bow, unable to withstand the temperature fluctuations and wind loads. As the issues became more severe, it was clear that a solution was needed. By the late 1980s, the decision was made to replace the marble with granite. For almost 2 decades, the building stood there, a monument to the miscalculation of using marble in such an environment. Now, you might think they would have just cut their losses and walked away. But this is Chicago we're talking about, a city known for its architectural innovation. They weren't going to let a little thing like a failing facade get them down. So, they came up with a plan, a costly plan. They decided to replace the marble with granite, a much more durable material. The project cost a staggering $80 million. Today, the Aon Center stands not only as a popular tourist destination, but also as a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. It's a reminder that even when we make mistakes, even when our foundations are shaky, we can find a way to adapt, to innovate, and to create something truly extraordinary. Plus, let's be honest, it makes for a pretty awesome photo op, right? Just try to resist the urge to do the whole holding up the building pose. It's been done. A lot. Alright, picture this. Shanghai, China, 2009. A bustling metropolis with construction happening everywhere you look. They're putting up buildings faster than Dwight can spill a pot of chili. One of these projects was the Lotus Riverside Complex, a pretty swanky apartment complex. I mean, we're talking 11 buildings, over 600 apartments. It was gonna be huge, like Michael Scott trying to impress a client huge. But there's a saying in construction, and I'm pretty sure it's ancient Chinese wisdom. A house built on a foundation of jelly beans and good intentions is probably gonna fall over. Okay, maybe I made that up, but it applies here. See, one of the buildings in the complex decided it didn't want to play by the rules of physics anymore, and it just tipped over. Yep, the whole building just completely ate it. Now you're probably thinking, Jim, how does a whole building just decide to take a nap? Well, let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. Imagine a giant game of Jenga, except instead of wooden blocks, it's concrete and steel. And instead of your goofy cousin losing, it's an entire building full of people's hopes and dreams. It turns out they'd been piling tons of excavated dirt next to the building, like right up against it. Think Kevin Malone at a buffet, but with dirt instead of mashed potatoes. This created so much pressure on the soil that the foundation basically said, "Nope, I'm out of here," and the building did a faceplant. The crazy thing is, not a single other building in the complex was damaged. It was like the building saw its own shadow and decided to take a 6-month nap. Sideways. Luckily, only one construction worker was killed in the collapse, which is a small miracle considering the scale of this blunder. The Lotus Riverside complex collapse was a major wake-up call for the construction industry in China. It's like when Michael burned his foot on the George Foreman grill, a painful lesson, but one that everyone learned from. The government launched a huge investigation and found a laundry list of problems, including shoddy construction materials, improper soil testing, and a blatant disregard for building codes. It was basically the construction equivalent of trying to run a business meeting with Michael Scott in charge. The good news is that the Chinese government really cracked down on building regulations after this, which is good because I don't think anyone wants to see a repeat performance of a building playing dominoes. Now, let's talk about the walkie-talkie building in London. This architectural marvel cost a whopping $240 million to build, but its reflective glass facade caused a major problem. It focused sunlight so intensely that it melted parts of cars parked on the street below. Okay, from China, we fast forward a few years and hop over to Sydney, Australia. This time, we're talking about the Sydney Opera House, a building so iconic it's recognized worldwide. This architectural marvel, with its distinctive sail-like design, was supposed to be a symbol of modern engineering. You know, sleek, stylish, and a testament to human creativity. But as they were building this masterpiece, they ran into a few tiny little problems. The project was plagued with delays, design changes, and budget overruns. Originally estimated to cost around $7 million, the final price tag ballooned to a staggering $102 million. That's over $95 million more than planned, and in today's money, it would be even more astronomical. Despite the financial headaches, the Sydney Opera House was finally completed and opened to the public in 1973. Today, it's one of the most visited landmarks in the world, attracting millions of tourists each year. So, while the cost overruns were a massive headache at the time, the Sydney Opera House has more than paid for itself in cultural and economic value. Hosting thousands of performances and events, it continues to be a beacon of artistic expression and architectural brilliance. Of course, maintaining such a complex structure isn't cheap, but the investment has proven to be worth every penny. So, what do you do when your multi-million-dollar project goes way over budget? You make it an icon, of course. The Sydney Opera House stands as a testament to the idea that sometimes, the greatest achievements come with the greatest challenges, and in the end, it's all worth it. Alright, for our next disaster, we're heading to the Big Apple, New York City. The year is 1977, and the disco ball is shining bright on the newly constructed Citigroup Center, a towering skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. This thing was huge, 59 stories of steel and glass, and it was designed by one of the most famous architects in the world. Everything about it screamed success, ambition, and maybe a little bit of, "I'm better than you," because, well, it was New York in the 70s, but here's the thing about skyscrapers. They're really, really heavy. And all that weight needs to be supported by a strong foundation, kind of like how Michael needs a constant supply of compliments to keep his ego afloat. Now, the Citigroup Center had a bit of a unique design quirk. Instead of placing the support columns at the corners of the building, like you'd expect, they decided to stick them in the middle of each side. Imagine a giant table standing on 4 toothpicks. That's pretty much what they were working with. And to make matters worse, these columns were bolted together instead of welded, which, in the world of structural engineering, is kind of like using Scotch tape to hold together a suspension bridge. To top it all off, a few months after the building opened, a student at Princeton University was doing some, light reading about the building's design and realized there was a teensy tiny problem. The building was dangerously vulnerable to strong winds, particularly those from a certain direction. And guess what? There was a hurricane brewing in the Atlantic. So picture this, it's the middle of the night, a hurricane is on its way to New York City, and a bunch of construction workers are frantically trying to weld together the support columns of a skyscraper. Talk about a stressful day at the office. They couldn't evacuate the building because, well, that would cause a panic. And they couldn't just ignore the problem because, well, have you ever seen a skyscraper fall down? It's not pretty. For weeks they worked in secret, reinforcing the building with steel plates and praying that the hurricane wouldn't veer off course. And you know what? They actually pulled it off. The hurricane missed New York, the building stayed upright, and the public had no idea about their close call until years later. Now let's talk about the Seongsu Bridge collapse in Seoul, South Korea. This tragic event occurred on October 21, 1994, and resulted in the loss of 32 lives and injuries to 17 others. The collapse was caused by a failure in the suspension structure due to poor welding and insufficient maintenance. The cost of this disaster was immense, both in human lives and financially. The estimated cost of the collapse was around $2 million USD. The bridge was eventually rebuilt, but the memory of the disaster remains a stark reminder of the importance of proper construction and maintenance practices. Alright guys, buckle up because we're about to talk about a construction disaster that shook the world. I'm talking about the Lotus Riverside Complex, a structure so infamous, it makes Toby's desk look like a masterpiece of engineering. This complex, located in Shanghai, China, was supposed to be a symbol of modern living and architectural prowess. It was supposed to be this grand symbol of progress, connecting people and all that jazz. But there was one tiny problem. It had the unfortunate habit of, well, collapsing. I mean, we're not talking about a little crack here. This thing was falling, twisting, practically doing the jitterbug down there. You'd think they'd built it out of rubber bands and paper clips instead of steel and concrete. Naturally, people were a little hesitant to live in a complex that looked like it was auditioning for a role in a disaster movie, but hey, at least the views were probably amazing. Right before you closed your eyes and prayed to the building gods for safe passage. Honestly, the whole thing sounds like something out of a cartoon, right? Except, well, this was all too real. See, the engineers, bless their hearts, had underestimated the power of the soil. And I'm not talking about a gentle shift here, I'm talking about soil so unstable it could probably swallow Dwight's beet farm whole. You see, the complex's design didn't account for something called soil liquefaction. Basically, the soil was shifting in just the right way to create these crazy instabilities. It's kind of like when you shake a model building and it makes that annoying rattling sound, except, you know, a million times bigger and scarier. So there's this complex, right, swaying and twisting like it's possessed, and everyone's thinking, okay, this can't be good, and they were right. On June 27, 2009, the inevitable happened. The soil shifted, the complex started shaking like a bowl full of jelly, and then, snap, crackle, collapse. The entire thing collapsed into the ground. Thankfully, only one poor dog was near the complex at the time, a cocker spaniel named Tubby, who sadly didn't make it. Poor Tubby. This is a tragic story, but I bet Michael would somehow find a way to make this about sprinkles. The collapse of the Lotus Riverside Complex was a major wake-up call for the engineering world. It showed that even the most brilliant minds can sometimes miss the mark, especially when it comes to battling Mother Nature. The good news is, engineers learned a ton from this epic fail. They started designing buildings with soil stability in mind, adding things like deeper foundations and better soil analysis to prevent future collapses. Think of it as giving buildings a little more stability. Today, complexes are designed to withstand even the most brutal soil conditions. They run soil tests, use computer simulations, and generally take things a whole lot more seriously than Michael takes his role as safety manager. And that's a good thing because the last thing any of us want is to be living in a complex, minding our own business, when suddenly, well, you know. Anyway, the next time you're living in a complex, take a moment to appreciate the engineering marvels that keep you from plummeting into the abyss. It's a lot more complicated than it looks. The collapse of the Lotus Riverside Complex resulted in a financial loss of approximately $30 million USD. Alright folks, get ready for a story that's as heartbreaking as it is important. We're talking about the Spanish submarine miscalculation, a blunder that cost a staggering $2.2 billion. Picture this, it's July 17, 1981. The Hyatt Regency, this swanky hotel with a multi-story atrium, is hosting a tea dance in its lobby. Hundreds of people are there, dressed to the nines, ready to cut loose and have a good time. There's music, laughter, and a whole lot of, well, tea dancing. It's a scene straight out of a feel-good movie, until it isn't. Above the bustling crowd, suspended from the ceiling were these two walkways, one directly above the other, like a balcony, but fancier. It was a design feature meant to wow the guests, to make them say, "Ooh la la, look at us, we're so sophisticated." But as the music played and the dancers twirled, a fatal flaw in the walkway's design was about to reveal itself. This wasn't just a design flaw though, this was a blunder of epic proportions. Now I'm no architect, but even I know that when you're suspending tons of steel and concrete over people's heads, you want to make sure it's secure. And that's where things went horribly wrong at the Hyatt Regency. The original design called for the walkways to be supported by a single set of long rods hanging from the ceiling. But somewhere along the way, someone decided to change things up. Maybe they thought it would be easier to install. Or maybe they just wanted to use up some extra metal rods they had lying around. Whatever the reason, the change they made was about as smart as trying to fix a leaky pipe with duct tape and a prayer. Instead of one set of strong rods, they used two sets of shorter rods, one connected to the other. This doubled the load on the connection points. Imagine hanging from a tree branch, and then suddenly, your heavier friend decides to hang on right below you. Yeah, not good. So, there you have it. Hundreds of people dancing below two walkways held up by a design that was just begging for trouble. It's enough to make you want to grab a hard hat and a roll of duct tape and head for the nearest exit. At 7:05 p.m., right in the middle of the festivities, the unthinkable happened. The fourth-floor walkway, unable to support the weight of the crowd above, ripped free from its supports and crashed down onto the second-floor walkway below. The combined weight of both walkways then collapsed onto the crowded atrium floor. It was a scene of utter chaos and devastation. 114 people lost their lives that night, and over 200 were injured. The collapse sent shockwaves throughout the nation and beyond, raising serious questions about building codes, engineering ethics, and the importance of sweating the small stuff. In the aftermath of the tragedy, a thorough investigation revealed a cascade of errors, from the flawed design change to inadequate communication between the architects and the construction team. It was a harsh reminder that even in the world of concrete and steel, there's no room for shortcuts or complacency. The Hyatt Regency walkway collapse stands as a stark reminder of the importance of getting the details right, of rigorous oversight, and of learning from our mistakes. It's a story we should never forget, a call to action to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. Alright folks, let's dive into a story that's about as far from funny as you can get, the Dubai aquarium leak. This wasn't just a minor mishap, it was a significant and costly blunder. Picture this, it's February 2010. The Dubai Mall, one of the largest shopping centers in the world, houses the Dubai Aquarium. It's a marvel of engineering, but even marvels can have their flaws. The aquarium's massive glass panels are designed to hold back millions of liters of water. But on that fateful day, a leak was discovered. The leak quickly escalated, causing panic and a swift response. Water began flooding parts of the mall, leading to an emergency evacuation. The repair work was extensive and costly. The total cost of the Dubai Aquarium leak was estimated to be around $1 million. Despite the setback, the aquarium was repaired and reopened to the public. The Dubai Mall continues to be a major attraction, but the incident serves as a reminder of the risks involved in such ambitious projects. Since then, safety measures and maintenance protocols have been significantly improved to prevent future incidents. Dubai remains a city of ambitious projects, always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But the Dubai Aquarium leak is a costly lesson in the importance of structural integrity and vigilant maintenance. Alright guys, this one is tough. We're talking about the SNCF trains that were too wide. In 2014, the French railway company SNCF ordered 2,000 new trains, but there was a huge problem. The trains were too wide for many of the country's platforms. This blunder was due to a miscalculation in the design phase. The measurements were based on newer platforms, but many of France's older platforms were narrower. As a result, the new trains couldn't fit at around 1,300 stations. This mistake cost SNCF a staggering 50 million euros, or about $68 million. They had to spend that money to modify the platforms to accommodate the new trains. It was a massive and costly undertaking. SNCF officials had to publicly apologize for the oversight. The media had a field day with this blunder, and it became a national embarrassment. This incident highlighted the importance of double-checking measurements and ensuring quality control. Since then, SNCF has improved its design process to prevent such costly mistakes in the future. Today the trains run smoothly, but the memory of this expensive blunder remains a lesson for all. It's a reminder that even the smallest oversight can lead to massive consequences, both financially and reputationally. Okay, so we've talked about spaceships and bridges, but this next blunder hits a little closer to home. Literally. We're talking about the Deepwater Horizon explosion in the Gulf of Mexico. Picture this. It's 2010, you're working on an oil rig, ensuring everything runs smoothly. Life is good, right? Well, not for the folks on the Deepwater Horizon. See, this massive oil rig was built with one thing in mind: efficiency. They wanted it operational fast, and they were willing to cut some corners to get it done. And by cut corners, I mean they basically treated safety protocols like they were written in disappearing ink. They changed the original blueprints, added extra equipment, and even ignored some critical safety tests. Because who needs safety when you can pump more oil, right? Now, even with all the shortcuts, the rig managed to operate for several years. Several years of workers blissfully unaware that they were basically working on a ticking time bomb. But you can't cheat physics forever. Cracks started appearing in the equipment, machinery was vibrating like crazy. There were warning signs, people warning signs. But did the managers listen? Did they evacuate the rig and call in some safety engineers? Nope. They just moved some equipment around and hoped for the best. I'm not sure what's more baffling, the fact that they ignored the warning signs or the fact that they thought moving some equipment around would somehow magically fix the problem. It's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. So on April 20th, 2010, the inevitable happened. The Deepwater Horizon, which was probably violating more safety codes than it had oil barrels at that point, exploded. 11 workers lost their lives and 17 were injured. It was a completely avoidable tragedy, a stark reminder that when it comes to industrial operations, shortcuts can have deadly consequences. The explosion sparked outrage and a national conversation about corruption, lax regulations, and the dangers of putting profits ahead of people's safety. Because let's be real, folks, no sale, no deal, no amount of profit is worth risking human lives. The Deepwater Horizon may be gone, but the lessons it taught us about the importance of ethical operations, responsible engineering, and, not ignoring giant cracks in the equipment, those lessons will last a lifetime. And let's not forget the financial cost, over $60 billion in fines, cleanup, and settlements. Well folks, there you have it, the top 10 most expensive construction blunders ever. From sinking ships to collapsing buildings, we've seen it all. These blunders weren't just costly in terms of money, they also cost lives, livelihoods, and even national pride. But amidst the rubble and the wreckage, there's a silver lining. Each of these disasters taught us valuable lessons about engineering, safety, and the importance of getting things right. So the next time you see a building under construction or walk across a bridge, take a moment to appreciate the hard work and meticulous planning that goes into these structures. And maybe, just maybe, spare a thought for those who learned the hard way that even the smallest mistakes can have massive consequences. Hey, thanks for sticking with me on this wild ride through construction history's biggest oops moments. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button harder than a wrecking ball demolishing a poorly constructed building. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss out on our next video, where we'll be exploring. Well, you'll just have to wait and see. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, always double-check your work.